Okay, so a panel. I'll start with the introductions first. You start with yourself, Giles. Do an introduction. Yeah, you have to introduce yourself, although people probably know you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Giles Syrett. I'm a long-time PMC member of Apache CloudStack. I run the CloudStack European user group. My day job is being CEO of Shape Blue. I think most of you know who we are. We call ourselves the CloudStack company. We spend our lives working with Apache CloudStack.
Hi, everybody. My name is Grégoire. I'm involved in the company for many years now. Can't remember exactly. But I work on the CloudStack environment on a daily basis. I am founder of DIMSI, a French corporation. And I also work on another system called Microsoft Power Platform.
Hello guys, my name is Philipp Reisner. I'm CEO of Linbit, and apart from that, I'm really passionate about storage, so software replication of storage, and I'm passionate about the Linux kernel. And this is the story that brings me here.
Awesome. My name is Will Stevens. I am Aptum's CTO. I'm a longtime PMC member. I was the VP of the project in 2016 and the release manager for 4.9. And developer by trade. I've contributed some plugins and so on. So I've been a little bit separate from the community for the last couple of years, but digging back in and looking forward to collaborating with all of you again.
Okay, thank you. So I want to talk about contributing to CloudStack. And there's multiple ways how you can contribute, and I would like to have this panel, tell their experience, share their experience, also agree and probably disagree on how you contribute to an open source project. So I want a few hands here. Who thinks and who is a contributor to the project? So there's multiple hands, and there's ways how you contribute. So Giles, what is your contribution to the project? How do you think you're contributing to the project?
So, I mean, I'm unusual in that I don't write code. I used to write code, and it'd be very dangerous for Apache CloudStack if I started writing code again. My contributions: organizing a user group, occasionally helping with a little bit of documentation. Being on this panel, I consider a contribution, helping with this event. So non-code ways, which I think is just as important for the health of the project. Anybody disagrees that it's all about code? Is it all about writing code? No. Yes. There's the developer in the room. Yes, I know. Come on. It's about the code. I do agree with you, but Giles also. No.
And documentation,
jokes aside. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just saying, and documentation, right?
And documentation. No, but I think that brings us to a point, is that contributing to the project is not only writing code, it's way more things, and it's about your background, about the skills you have and how you can contribute. So Linbit is providing different contributions to the project. But if we look at it, in the end, nothing is free in this world. Although the beers, which are going to be at 6:30, theirs are going to be free because somebody's paying for them, but nothing is free in this world. So how do you find for your company, because somebody's paying your salary or it's your company, how do you find that there's a return on investment on investing in open source in general? Now, we're talking about CloudStack, so let's focus on CloudStack in this case, but where's the return on investment? Because the sun is for free, it comes up every morning, but that's about it. It needs to pay. So what is the return for your company, for you individuals?
I think it's a very good question. Basically, for a company like us, software companies, when you try to build a project or to build a product, it costs a lot of money, not only for code, I'm sorry about this, but also for documentation, like you said, but also testing, marketing, promotion, or a lot of different things. Working as a community help us to leverage all this cost and to find outside help to contribute to the project so you're not alone. And I think it's a very good way to reduce cost for building software for us.
And do you define a budget within your company per year, saying this is what we're going to be spending on open source? Is it a fixed budget?
Yes, we do.
And how do you get to such a number?
You don't really get a number, but you need to define a time. So in our internal system, we have time we track on the project, on open source project. Then we have marketing budget when we are a sponsor, like we are here. We have a budget, so it's on a yearly basis, and we discuss this internally, mainly with Geoffrey.
Okay. Anybody here in the audience who has a marketing budget or an open source budget which they can use for contributions or going to an event like this? Because in the end, we build these events together. And what I'm trying to get to is, and get your opinion in the panel, is how do you define something within a company and make open source work for your company? So how do you monetize it? Sometimes it's seen as a dirty word in the open source, but in the end, we need to make a return on it. So any experience in the audience or in the panel who can tell me how do you, well, we asked about a budget, how do you get a return on your open source investments?
I've got some thinking on that, and I think, first of all, it's heavily dependent on the type of organisation, right? So if you're a vendor who has products to sell and the open source technology is a route to market, that's quite an easy calculation. You know, we need to sell X number of our product, and therefore, okay, we know what we're going to make from that, therefore we should invest that in the community. An open source services business like ShapeBlue, it's quite easy for us because we live and breathe this stuff. But where that gets difficult, I think, is for the consumers and the users of open source. And as an Apache project, we proudly say it's free for anybody to take. There's no expectation you're going to contribute back. But it's the point for the users of the software when is there a tipping point that they should be investing back in that community. And that isn't an easy calculation. That's not something that you can easily sort of just say, okay, we know we're going to get this return on investment at point X. It's quite a complex, and you need to understand the ethos and the mentality of open source to start to make those calculations.
I would actually kind of go a little bit further on that as well, is that if you're going into open source with an expectation of an ROI, you might be doing it for the wrong reason. And because it's not straightforward to have an ROI. There are certain businesses where you have software and there's certain adoption and that kind of thing that you can drive an ROI. But I know that when I was the VP and I was the release manager, I was putting in a ton of hours. And yes, my employer paid for part of them, but I was putting in way more hours than my employer was paying for, right? And I think that you kind of have to go into it understanding what it is that you are trying to achieve in that contribution, and kind of work towards that as well, because if you're trying to think of it financially, it's going to be very difficult to make the math work, because it is, there's a lot more to it than just making the math work. One of the things that I would say is that one of the biggest contributions that you kind of have to account for when you are thinking about open source is, as he mentioned, time. More than anything, it's going to be how many resources am I going to contribute towards this project? And you're thinking of people time as the currency that you are putting towards it, because it will very much be a commitment by that person. The value that you're going to get out of the community and the value that you're going to put in is going to be proportional to the amount of time that you contribute towards it. So you really almost kind of have to think of it from a time perspective versus a currency perspective. And that time will have a financial amount to it, but you have to create the space for people to actively contribute. Otherwise, if it's always about what your ROI is, it's very difficult to make that work in an altruistic way. In my experience, anyways.
I completely agree with you. Apache is an individual contributor model, right? And I'm sure all of us here who contribute, we all do it on an individual basis, but ultimately it comes down, somebody has got to pay for that time.
Yeah.
Right? And yes, during a release, we've all worked very long hours, but somebody has to pay for it. And I think it's probably one of the things in open source we've sort of brushed under the carpet and not talked about enough. Yep. We all say, oh, we're all individual contributors. We pretend companies aren't involved. And it's a great thing in Apache that we have no role for companies. I get that, but somebody has to pay for the time. And to say there's no ROI calculation, somebody, even if it's only broad, has gone, okay, I'm going to put 2 people into this program. I'm going to put 200 because the market opportunity or whatever, or the software we're going to get back is this.
Yeah.
Even if it's not an explicit ROI calculation, I think there's one going on in somebody's brain somewhere, you know.
Yeah, I agree. It's I think that you don't always know exactly what you're going to get out. I think that you are taking a step, and you have an idea of what you're going to get out, but at the same time you have to commit before you know for sure whether or not that's going to pay off. I think in a way.
I'd like to, because I think Peter, you wanted to add something to this.
I mean, so please stop me if I go off
So
topic.
Philip, sorry,
right?
keep the name here. My apologies. There's not a Peter.
So-
my apologies. Yeah.
So, but there is another huge open source project, the Linux kernel. And yes, people contribute, but they are all paid by companies, right? And for them, it's pretty obvious, I think, right? Intel has a good reason that the Intel driver works on the kernel, right? So with the Linux kernel, I think it's very obvious why all these corporations, the hardware vendors, is obvious. It's easy to understand. The service vendors, let's say Red Hat, it's also, it's easy to explain why they invest. And now let's come back to CloudStack. I don't want to go off topic. And I take Linbit as my example, right? So the investment we have into CloudStack, well, we expect the return on invest with the customers, where we can sell our support service for the storage offerings, right? So, yeah.
And we're seeing this massive migration from a specific hypervisor to a different hypervisor, where you might have somebody making a calculation, we're paying X now as license fees, and it's going to go to 0 because we're going to go to open source. And that is an assumption you see quite a lot, because going for open source for a lot of people is a synonym for it's going to become free. It's going to be free.
Yeah.
We're going to put 0 in the Excel sheet, which is a great return on investment, infinite return on investment, not anything. So how do we convince companies that when they go towards KVM in this migration, where they're going to save tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or maybe millions per year, depending on the company size, that they're going to be spending a bit of that on contributing to open source? And let's say, put it CloudStack here, and yeah, I'm making this a financial thing, because in the end, I think it is financial. And I also want contributors to get time with their employers. I want to have arguments. So how do we get these arguments for these people working somewhere who want to contribute, write code, because that's what they like, but they need to make a certain business case?
I think that's the key point, right? And that's a mindset, and that's a cultural thing. And the companies I've seen who have been unsuccessful with open source of any description are the ones who haven't changed that mindset. They still perceive it as a vendor-style relationship. I mean, there are vendors out there, Red Hat, for example, who will give you an open source solution, but sort of turn it into a vendor-looking solution. But you know, from the beginning, organizations need to accept this is not a zero-cost thing. Yes, there's no licensing, they can run it, but they're either going to have to work with somebody who's going to help them, to support them and contribute, or they're going to need to do that themselves, with the latter being the preferable thing. And that is just a cultural mindset change. One interesting thing, I think, in leadership within IT generally, we see a lot more people now who have come from open source backgrounds than I certainly did 10 years ago. So that's starting to come through. And I think in another 10 years, it will just be accepted in the industry. We know we're going to have to do something if we're going to use open source.
Is there something, I'll get to you in a second, or
I was just going to kind of add to that a little bit, and that is that, like right now, if you were to try to hire somebody who has vCenter expertise, there's tons of people out there, right? There's just a vast number of people who can support that. Whereas if you're going to go and try to hire somebody that has CloudStack expertise, good luck. There's scarcity in that. So you have to also think about the fact that you need to grow and develop that that within this process, right? You're not going to be able to go and hire the in that type of scarcity of a market. You have to invest in being able to grow and develop that within your organization to be able to be successful. And I think that's kind of to your point, where you have to have a different mindset about how you're thinking about it. Because you're not going to be able to go and hire your way out of a problem in this case.
If we're looking at contributing to CloudStack, and let's say, is there an issue with our governance model? Let's say we're not under the Apache Software Foundation. Let's freely think. Are there barriers currently in the project or in our governance which prevent or might scare some contributors away from the project?
Some companies away from the project? Or
Companies or individual contributors where you say, if we were able to improve this, then we might get more contributors.
Yeah, so there's two different things there for me is, you know, the role of the individual contributor and the fact we have no role for companies in Apache, which, by the way, works. It's what gives us this long-term organic software that doesn't get dramatically pulled from one direction to another by big vendors being involved. But that can be a bit scary to companies, like vendors, for example. They were going to be like, who do I speak to? I talked about that this morning, like, who is the community? Well, it's this sort of amorphous group of people, and we're all here. But there's no direct phone number for the Apache CloudStack community, and if you're dealing with a vendor, there is a direct... So they don't know where to go and how to navigate. And then...
But you have the email address of the PMC, right?
Yeah.
But so that's the phone number, not the email address.
No, but of course, but yeah, so you told me about a vendor. I know another vendor which I'm talking with who are thinking about their commercial backup provider. They are thinking about building a plugin, but indeed they're asking the questions, who do I contact, and you know, what's my potential business case for writing this plugin? How much sales could I get? But as an open source project and the Apache Software Foundation, we will have nobody doing the marketing, which says, well, if you write this plugin, this is what you're going to get. So are there improvements we can make? Okay, we're an Apache Foundation, that's going to happen. Are there some things we can change within the project which would hopefully add more contributions or get more contributors?
Does anybody else want to say?
No, but I think we come from very far away, and it's getting better and better years after years. I think we have people here working on a daily basis for marketing, making surveys to know how many hosts are in production, KVM, VMware. So, but I think you're right. We should still improve this and probably give some roles for non-technical people just to help to give more visibility to who we are and what could be expected from the community and from the technology.
Are we lacking statistics? Are we lacking a cool home feature within the management server which reports back the usage where we can then tell the world about what we're doing? Is that something which would help?
I have a different opinion on that. I don't think the organization needs to change. If this backup vendor is not sure what he should do because there is no commercial entity to talk to, then he needs to change his mindset and find out that there is a PMC and a mailing list and so on. So how it works. So I think no change necessary. They need to change.
They need to change.
My opinion.
Are there any opinions in the room where if somebody says, well, from my experience, I found barriers contributing to the project, or it was super easy, which is also something we'd like to hear. Any opinions on things which could change? No, Dan, you have an opinion. That's good.
So, I think...
yeah, the microphone's on his way.
Oh, sorry. I have a loud voice, so that's okay.
They won't hear you on YouTube, Don.
Yes, and also this yes with the same affirmative tone as the no before. This is very much from a developer point of view, and I think we are slow in reacting. We are slow in reacting to issues, and we are slow in reacting to contributions in terms of code, and that's been bugging me ever since I joined in 2012, that the slowness is sometimes pushing people away, and there's lots of anecdotes that confirm this. And I don't think there's any mindset change needed in terms of how the project addresses people. except maybe that we have gone too far in not being a coder-centric environment. We award people for being very active in marketing, in organizing events, in making documentation, and it's all very good. And I think it works, and everybody that does contribute in that way is feeling very welcomed, and we should continue that. But the coders, they have to wait for a first review, they have to complain, and then they get a direction, so find someone that can review your code. And the coders that are present are mainly looking at their friends' code. So I think we should look at our developers and try to improve there.
Okay, but we got an audience here, and I hear you, Dan. We got an audience here. How can we improve this? Because
So I work with different open source communities. So the kernel, CloudStack, and a few others. And I would say CloudStack is not worse than the others.
Good to know.
You're saying it's almost a sort of symptom of it being an open source project. It's like,
Right.
yeah.
So
You're depending on individuals to contribute.
I'm not saying don't try to improve, but
I think Dan's point raises a sort of another point on the side, which is different types of code contributors, right? So we have a lot of people come in from different organizations because they need to do some integration, or they need a particular feature if they're a user, and they come in and they want to do that. But then moving it on to the level of, I'll use you as an example, Dan, somebody who spends a lot of time reviewing other people's work, helping other people, they're the sort of people I think we need to develop more of, or we need more of those people in our community. It isn't just about the immediate thing that you need for your business. It's about being able to spend, I don't know, an hour a day or something helping other people in the community. And if there's a cry for help, I would have, it's like, if anybody in the room feels that they can step up and start helping more with that would be great.
So I know other open source projects, they have monthly or weekly developer meetups through video calls where just developers come together and they can just share. Sometimes those conversations are pretty boring, or sometimes they're very active. Would that be something which helps with CloudStack? Or do we have experience with this that it doesn't work or does work?
We tried it. I've tried it
A long time ago. So
I think these things are always great to try. I mean, my conclusion, that I think twice we've tried it over the years, that the asynchronous nature of, collaborating on GitHub and via email is great, especially when you're a global community. The synchronous nature of everybody trying to get together on a call, a lot of an initial interest, and then it falls away very quickly. That's probably a bit of a negative attitude, but that's what I saw.
I see heads nodding, which seems that we're agreeing on this. No?
Yeah, but I was wondering, I know there is a release manager for each new CloudStack release. Is there a sort of internal kickoff for each release? A meetup, maybe we could do this kind of thing? Because, I mean, in our internal project, we do many kickoffs and so on. It could be something good for maybe a release. Once a release manager is defined, then we could arrange.
So currently we do not have any set targets for certain releases. We just go, PRs come in, we merge them, and then voila, we have a new version.
Yeah. But is it good?
But is it something which would be worth investigating? But then we're talking about coordination, that we set certain targets for a new version, and that we work towards those targets with the community, but then we need a kickoff. Anybody disagreeing or agreeing with this? And if you
agree, my question would be, like, how do you identify what should be included? Because the thing is that for most of the contribution, there is some business case by some organization, and that is why it's contributed. And especially in CloudStack, and kind of coming back to the original question a little bit, what are the challenges that we're dealing with something that when I was the VP, I fought pretty hard on this, and I didn't win this battle, but it's about the being able to contribute financially to the project. That was something that I battled for and lost. I got it, but it was implemented in such a way that it wasn't possible for us to actually take advantage of it, but that's a different story. But so there's kind of two different sides to that coin, right? In other Apache Foundation projects, think of like some of the big data projects, they have like a sponsor in a sense from a vendor perspective, and that drives a lot of the marketing, it drives a lot of the roadmap and so on. So there's kind of two sides to that coin. Either you can be vendor led and you can have a roadmap, or you can be community led and then the roadmap essentially is developed by the community based on what's relevant to that, right? So I think there's a little bit of a mix here, and I think that one of the things that, like back to what could we improve, is really around the advocacy, because we're going to be entering the next 2 years. There's going to be a lot of new users that are introduced to the potential of this market. And like I introduced CloudStack to a telco a couple weeks ago. And the types of questions I was being asked is, how many developers are active in this community? How is it being supported? They are expecting a vendor type scenario. Yeah. And the fact that we don't have a paid for marketing plan, and we don't have visibility in the market that is like penetrating the market in a way that a vendor-oriented organization will recognize, appreciate, and be like, oh yeah, I can trust that they have something that is like valuable. I think that is holding back the project a bit. Now, I'm not saying that having it is a good thing, because it's a double-edged sword. But I think acknowledgement and like appreciation that that is a double-edged sword, and it's something that we need to be orienting around, I think is important. And just to finish that point, I just want to also say thank you to Shape Blue, who has been carrying the torch on this in the because there isn't marketing, and there isn't like a real focus by the community on outreach and advocation for the project. And I feel like Shape Blue has actively been carrying that torch for years, a decade, basically. And so, thank you. Because
it's heavy.
It is. I know it is, because it I tried to do it for a year, and and the amount of investment that you have to do to be able to make it real and continue to do it is non-trivial. So I think it's a massive community service that I think we might take advantage of, or take for granted, I mean, within the community. So it's, yeah.
Thank you.
Very kind.
And thank you, Shape Blue, because also looking at time, yeah, that's also my role here.
Oh, yeah. Loads more to say on
Huh?
it. I've got lots more to say on
Yeah,
it.
I know you got lots more to say, but we're also between, it's just because, and then the beers, right? So it's, yeah.
Right.
Short reaction of Giles, and I have a few questions for the audience.
Okay, I was just gonna, thanks for that, Will. The idea of a CloudStack alliance, that was something we talked about for years, and we just could not get it off the ground. I'm pleased in some ways we didn't, because having the Apache model gives us that longevity, and it was going to be very, very difficult to do that commercial piece on the side. Yeah. And quite simply, going along to companies, some of which are our customers, but then other people, and saying, write me a check for thousands of dollars just to help market and position an open source project you use, isn't easy itself.
That's right.
It's really difficult.
It is.
Shape Blue are interested in that because we obviously almost have that sort of pseudo-vendor relationship with the technology, but going to other people and saying, look, contribute to this is hard work. But that's something that, that as the project evolves and grows, that might be something I think we probably need to do.
I think it's going to be more and more important over the next 2 years, because the thing is that there are going to be more potential customers or potential contributors and users of CloudStack over the next 2 years, just due to the market dynamics, that if we're going to give it a fair shake, and put it this way. In almost all the conversations I have, I'm the one who's introducing CloudStack. And do you know what the number one thing that they are looking at as an alternative to VMware? It's Proxmox. Now,
This is my point.
right, right? And so, like, we don't have the penetration into the market around mindshare, and the reality is that Proxmox might be great for very small deployments where it's a mom and pop shop and so on, but you don't have the feature density there to be able to compete with.
But you know what's the number one reason for Proxmox? Is that you can install it in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And this is why we launched this CloudStack appliance.
Yeah.
We just want to get CloudStack into the hand of the users very, very easily.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
With that, I have one question left for the audience, and it is that who contributed, and you have a question as well, so I'll get to you in a moment, who contributed code to the project? Okay. And did anybody experience a barrier before you open, so you're on GitHub, and you're about to hit this button, submit PR, did you feel any hesitation, like, okay, I'm now going to contribute to an open source project, I've never done this before? Somebody who says, yeah, well, I found that it was a barrier to contribute, but afterwards it was fine, but it was pretty scary to open my first PR. And because where I want to go to, is there something which we can improve as a project, that if there's a barrier, can we take away the barrier? Well, that seems like that. Oh, Ruben, so you have, so if there's a mic for Ruben?
While he walks over there, I learned about HackerBook today, and I have to say that that is something that we should be getting more visibility on, because that, I think, is partly to your question of is there a barrier? I think that is part of the answer to that. But
yeah.
So to me, to my company maybe, my initial commit to the project, there was initially no barrier to start with, but hooking into what Dan said, there was a lack of response that then got me questioning whether what I was contributing was right, is it the right thing to do? And well, it did improve a feature, it did get merged, so that took away that barrier, but yeah, communication and responsiveness of pull request is slow sometimes.
Okay, but Dan said that, and then I know there's still an outstanding question there, but would you now also be a one going to GitHub and start reviewing with pull requests? Because in the end, we do this together. So you went through the barrier, and then I think everybody should then also be on GitHub and reviewing pull requests. Because in the end, we do it together, and it sounds really like kumbaya, sitting around, but that's kind of like it is, right? In an open source project.
To me, that sounds like still too much of a hurdle, especially considering I don't have merge rights, and well, to me that's a barrier that I don't feel I should be responsible or part responsible for reviews.
Okay.
In my internal organization, sure, because it's different.
Okay, thank you. Then there was one question here in front. Oh, I see two more hands. And we're running out of time, so let's give it another 2-3 minutes, and then it's 6, and then it is time to wrap up.
I just want to add to this thing, like reviewing others' code. Like I got commit rights in April for Apache CloudStack, but I still would not be comfortable to review code of parts which I basically don't know from the code base. So I wouldn't take the responsibility to say, okay, this code is good, because I don't know if any change there could break something else or like that. So because, I mean, I could review changes from my code if someone else contributed to that part, but I wouldn't take the responsibility to say, yeah, that's good code for other parts of the project. And so you need some I guess the core people from Shape Blue, which are mostly working there, to take the responsibility, but I also see that where you get the time from, because you also have to fix bugs on your own or for issues, and when do you have time to really review others' code then?
Thanks for the feedback.
That's a really good point as well, because like there's a lot of code base in CloudStack, and I've contributed to certain areas like networking, for example, and I'd be comfortable to review certain areas of the code base, but definitely not all of it, right? And I wonder if there is an opportunity for us to almost have, I don't know if I want to call it a working group or such, where you are putting up your hand to say, I am capable of reviewing this type of code, and then getting those groups of people more working together. Like I knew that, like when I was the release manager, I kind of knew who was contributing to different areas, and I went and like sussed them out and said, hey, I need your help reviewing these PRs because I know you know that part of the system. But I was watching the community, and I was picking out individuals who I knew were active and knew certain areas, and so I was going to them and asking them to help me, because I couldn't review everything. I could run CI on everything, but I couldn't review everything, right? And so I kind of preempted that in a sense when I was a release manager by going and actively doing that. But I think there would be a benefit if there was some sort of alignment around where the knowledge sits in the community and who could review different types of things.
Yeah, in other projects they have like a maintainers file where it's like a map where you can find, okay, for this file you write to those people, for this file you write to those people.
Very well.
I like that idea.
No, but you see project need where certain folders in the repository say, okay, these are the ones which are experts. But there was a question still, or a remark from the audience, so...
Yeah, I'm the last one between the beer and the audience, so I'll keep it quick. It's not really a question. It's a suggestion on what all can be improved. My only submission is that the feature development or the design is still done more from an enterprise perspective rather than a service provider perspective. And this is my definite observation from the other side of the table. And I think the design or the feature evaluation committee or whatever that process is should definitely wear the hat of a service provider and have a look at the implementations. One of my colleagues will be speaking about this as to a lot of the challenges we face when they're pitching this in RFPs and how we circumvent that challenges. It does become considerably challenging in some areas.
Okay.
I don't disagree with you there, Shiv. I think this fundamentally comes down to the point I made earlier, which is contributors who are broader contributors than just what they want. I mean, we always come together, we have these sort of panels, everybody comes up with ideas, we come away with initiatives, let's do some calls. We need the people to do that. And it's no single person's responsibility. We are an individual contributor community, but we need people talking about reviewing, right? And out of the people who said, they make code contributions, how many have ever reviewed somebody else's? I know there's challenges with it. How many have done the more general things? How many people have helped organize an architecture call where we could get together on that?
Is there like a feature review also before it gets to the code phase? The discussion or
Normally there's a proposal made and the discussions are on the mailing list. But
I'll just repeat, because indeed the question is there a feature review, and Giles, as you said, on the mailing list.
It should be in Confluence and it should be discussed on the mailing list. But again, I'll be frank, it's one of the problems we've got. Somebody says, hey, I want to build this, I've put this up. And people are terrible at coming back and giving feedback because it's not something on their radar today that they want to do. So, until we're at the stage where we get more people who are prepared to do some general contribution, an hour a week or an hour a day, and that is symptomatic that we're a predominantly user-driven community. We haven't got lots of big vendors in here, and that's great to a certain extent.
And with that, I think I want to
Okay.
close off, because indeed, individual, an hour a week, an hour a month. So I think that will be the homework for everybody. Think, reflect on your own situation. Can you contribute an hour per month, an hour per week, an hour per day would be even better. But can you contribute yourself in any form, which is just indeed reviewing a PR or being active on the mailing list, on the users list, replying to an email coming in for a first-time user who comes along, reply to this email saying, hey, welcome to the list, I got the answer, even though it's a very simple answer. So I think that is, for us, being a community, helping each other. So for yourself, figure if there's some more investment you can do in time or money-wise, sponsoring an event and contributing to the project. So thank you for your feedback, panel. Thank you for being here. And then we will see each other in 30 minutes for the beers, which is to the exit, to the right, across the hotel H10. There's a bar, and we'll meet each other there. So thank you.